Hello, welcome to the, I don't want to show that. Just don't want to spoil the surprises. Welcome to the .NET Community Stand-Up. Today for .NET Community Stand-Up, I have on as guests Syed Hashimi and Tim Mulholland. And we're going to be talking about Web Life Preview, which is exciting. And I am John Galloway. I'm a PM on the .NET Community team. So welcome back. So Tim, you were on 18 months ago talking about the HTTP REPL.
That's right.
Which is cool. And Syed, you've been on about 400 times.
About that, I think.
Which is great. Okay, cool. Well, I'm just going to jump right into the community links. So let's do it. Whoop. As always, I share these out in the chat. I send them to your friends. I call your grandmother on the phone and talk about them. You will get these links so many times, so do not worry. The first one, Sean Wildemoth is releasing several of his courses. These are good quality courses, and they're available free now. So on some pretty topical stuff still, he's got Bootstrap 4, he's got Font Awesome, he's got Vue with ASP.NET Core, and SignalR. So Sean's a fabulous trainer, and this is a great resource. So thank you for releasing those for free, Sean. You are amazing. Next up, we have, this is a tweet from Kevin Pilch, and he is he's letting people know that there's a engineering manager position open. This is a principal software engineering manager for ASP.NET. So if you are interested, this is a great place to apply. All right, Steve Gordon, he's got a series now on ASP.NET Core dependency injection. Steve writes these really nice in-depth posts where he really digs into the internals. So this is, as you can see from the scroll bar, this is a post where you're going to want a cup of coffee and some quiet, relaxing music and spend some time on it. So this is really going into, there are good docs. There have been, plenty of good blog posts and things on, how to get dependency injection working, how to do something, relatively simple. This is if you actually want to really understand the internals, if you want to dig deep into things like scope and lifetime, etc. So this is a series he's doing. He's done 2 of these posts so far. So. Cool. All right. So this is from Luis, and he blogged about serving an ML model as an HTTP API. And what's kind of cool with this is he uses route to code and has this working in about 60 lines of code. So this is really neat to be able to expose a machine learning model and be able to serve it up as an API. So what I think is kind of neat with this is to be able to take something that could be a little bit theoretical and move it into something you can immediately start using in your applications. So here he's doing like sentiment analysis. And again, this is just a few lines of code. So good stuff. All right. So Motion is talking about what every ASP.NET Core Web API project needs. This is a series. And the first one, he talks about setting up Serilog. And so one of the nice things with ASP.NET Core is very configurable, very pluggable, and one of those areas is in logging. And so he goes through and shows how to configure it. And one of the nice things with Serilog is that you can really kind of enrich and customize exactly what you're logging out. So it's a structured logging system, and he goes through and shows configuring it, and then things like enrichers. So you can say, I want to store additional information and I want to structure it in a certain way. And of course, one of the nice things with all of these is when you wrap up that you can get a very beautiful dashboard. So of course, he ends his post with this pretty dashboard. So good stuff. I'm realizing, by the way, we've got Ignite going on right now, so we're competing. I hope our traffic numbers are about equal. All right, Ashwin talking about communication between microservices and typed clients using typed clients in Dapper. Part of the reason I bring this one up is because Dapper just launched. Dapper 1.0. So that's exciting. And then it's cool to be able to see using it in action. So this is communication between microservices, which is incredibly important. The whole kind of communication and wiring together is important. So this is, a walkthrough going through and showing all the stuff about how to hook all that up. All right, a few more. Just a quick shout out again to Niels. He's been doing this series on how to deploy Blazor WebAssembly using a bunch of different things. So because it is can be served up as static files, he just has been going through and showing the actual steps. Usually for all of them, it's true they're static files, but there's a little bit you've got to do as far as configuring to make sure that the routing works and to make sure that, any kind of front end, back end routing or different kind of, like here, the rewrites, for index HTML. So thanks again, Niels. All right, this is cool from David. He's talking about UI notifications with Blazor and SignalR. One of the reasons this one jumped out at me too is he's using this OpenSlay package that I hadn't heard of before. So this is a Saga management library for .NET Core. And the idea with the Saga is, for instance, if you've got like a long running thing in a microservice application, you've got to manage things that spawn multiple different services over a period of time for a distributed transaction, that kind of thing. So he shows setting that up and doing notifications with Blazor and SignalR. So being able to push those notifications out and say, this is the state, or the state is updated, or that kind of stuff. So very good. Hey, all right, getting towards the end here. This is a good one from James. By the way, James is coming up on the show soon. I'm excited about that because he is in New Zealand. It's hard to schedule, and so, but we're excited. We've got him coming on later this month. So he just posted today about Intellisense for app settings.json, which is going to make a lot of people happy. So he just shows, you're typing your app settings and all your stuff is there. I'm sorry, Sandeep, that the shine on my head is distracting. I don't know. I could maybe wear a hat. I could work on that. I'll see what I can do. But so anyways, this is exciting to me to see this. The amount of coding we have to do with app settings it's nice to be able to have this Intellisense. Welcome all the raid people coming over from C# Fritz. You're in the right place. We are going to be having some fun demos and stuff on Web Live Preview. And I'm just wrapping up the ASP.NET Community Stand-Up links for the week. So I'm talking about the Intellisense for app settings.json, which makes my day. Posting on a survey. So this is a survey for open source producers, consumers, maintainers. And this survey runs through March 21st, and you could win some money, but also very importantly, you could just benefit the community ecosystem by understanding what your pain points are, what your concerns are, et cetera. So please take a second and fill this out. And coming up towards the end of my list of links here, this just went out this morning. So Visual Studio 2019 version 16.9, as well as the next preview, are available today. Tons of refactoring and productivity stuff. Also, Visual Studio Mac 8.9 just went live. So we'll have a blog post on that going out later today as well. So a lot of great stuff in this one. Including, just all kinds of, like, for instance, updates for IntelliCode, for productivity. So some of this stuff like the refactorings. So it's funny, too, because I work with the VS Mac team, and it's really cool that these refactorings, in most cases, also roll over for free over to us on the VS Mac side. So that is a good thing. Last two links. So we had this event on Friday. This is the first of the Let's Learn .NET series. So this is a new series for beginners. And in this one, we focused on Web API. So this was Jamie Singleton and Cecil Phillip, and they just walked through the basics of getting started with Web API. So excited to see the series launch. And if you missed it, the video's up. And a little bit Inception or whatever, but they also use the URL list for tracking their links. And so this is their list of links for all the web API stuff. So sharing this out because this is a lot of great resources. All right. That's a lot of talking. As always, there are a lot of links to share. I am done though. So Syed, Tim, what is new with what is Web Live Preview?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, exactly. Great. Definitely want to say thanks for having us on the show here. And before we dive into it, should we do some introductions, or we've already been kind of introduced? How does it go here, John? It's up to you. This is your show. We're just living in it.
My job is mostly for my forehead to shine. Really, the whole head to shine. So but it's like a spotlight. I'm shining upward towards you. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves a bit more and talk about what you do and what you're building and stuff.
Yeah, sure. Okay, great. Yeah, so Syed Ibrahim Hashimi, program manager on ASP.NET Features and Visual Studio. Been at Microsoft for about 10 years here, or a little bit over 10 years, I guess. And, the whole time I've been working on some sort of ASP.NET tooling and worked in Visual Studio for Mac for a couple of years and back to Visual Studio itself. All right, Tim, you want to go?
Yeah. Tim Mulholland. I'm a developer on the Visual Studio Web Tools team. I've been at Microsoft for, let's see, what's today's date? Just under 2 years, 2 weeks shy of 2 years. So, 1 year working from home and 1 year in the office. Nice even split. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot to mention I work from home for the past 3 years from Florida. Okay, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Web Live Preview and we're really here for kind of two reasons, right? So let me kind of lay it out for everybody here. So we've got this product, or we've got this feature called Web Live Preview, and we want to go over what that is and what its kind of current capabilities are. But then I think the more kind of important part of this conversation is really what is the future of Web Live Preview and where are we taking that, right? So those are the two things that I wanted to kind of talk about today. So what we can do is, Web Live Preview right now is like kind of what it is like it's just kind of like a previewer essentially, and it's got some basic kind of edit capabilities there. But in the long run, what we're doing here is, when for web forms developers, ever since web forms was released, and man, that was a while ago. Time flies, right? So yeah, ever since web forms was released, there's always been a kind of design experience for that you've got inside the IDE there, right? Mm-hmm. And I think in the beginning it was really great, and it was really kind of accurate and up to date with the web technologies back at the time. But over the course of the past 5 years, 10 years, man, the web technology is really kind of sped up, and there's HTML5 and CSS3 and all sorts of other kind of innovations happening, right? And that web forms designer itself has been kind of stagnating, and it's a bear basically, right? To be quite honest with you, I heard something about something like 5 million lines of code or something like that, basically, and this code is like 30 years old, and it was created by a whole different entire group, and I'm sure they had way more people working on that than we had. So now we're kind of faced with this problem here. We've got this kind of design experience there, but it's not up to date with the current standards, and it's not accessible at all. And since Satya has been the kind of CEO of Microsoft, there's been this big push for accessibility across all products in Microsoft. Not only Visual Studio but Word and whatever product we have, you name it. It's got to be accessible, right? Yeah. So now we're kind of faced with this problem. We've got this web forms designer that's just totally not accessible, and it would take probably developer years to make that thing accessible, right? And then even if we did all that work, it still wouldn't be up to date with the latest kind of HTML and CSS and web standards, basically, right? So so what we've been doing is we've been working on this thing that we call Web Live Preview, and that's what we're going to be demoing today. But keep in mind that this is basically going to be the future web forms designer for Visual Studio users, right? So what you're going to see here is really just kind of the very kind of beginning of this feature here. And the whole reason why we're here is not to kind of show how great Web Live Preview is right now. It's really to kind of connect with web forms and full framework developers there, ASP.NET full framework developers, right? And we want to connect with people. So, if you've got a chance to send me an email, and if you're interested in helping kind of shape the future of the web forms designer, definitely feel free to reach out to me. Please reach out to me, I guess I should say. And let's set up some time so that we can chat, and we'll do a survey and a video and all that kind of stuff, basically. So that's really kind of my goal here, is to kind of connect with the web forms community and make sure that we're on the right track to replace the web forms designer, basically, right?
Yeah.
All right.
A question on this then. You talked about that this is a previewer, and it's or it is a way, it is kind of like the IDE. What I'm wondering is this very tightly scoped to web forms, or is this something that could affect other kind of like web development as well?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, great question. So what we're going to see today is limited to ASP.NET full framework. So that'll include, web forms and ASP.NET MVC, but and we're kind of laser focused on those scenarios here, right? But on the ASP.NET Core front, we've got a parallel kind of effort going on that's called Hot Reload. And Hot Reload is going to be able to kind of, you make some changes, it'll refresh the browser and those sorts of things. But I think later on, after we've been able to kind of, accomplish our goals of replacing the web forms designer, then we'll start working more with the ASP.NET Core team to see how can we kind of, how can we take Hot Reload and then Web Live Preview and then kind of put them together to kind of get the best out of both worlds here. But like I said, we're ASP.NET Core team is they got their plates full, and we've got our plates full with this web forms designer thing, and we're just kind of laser focused on doing what we need to do to replace the designer. But we're definitely going to circle back to ASP.NET Core. But part of that is what the community is saying as well. So let's say we've got these ASP.NET full framework developers, and they're using Web Live Preview, and they say, hey, this is really great, we need this for ASP.NET Core, so we need feedback as well, right? So that's a part of it, right? If what we're creating adds value, then I believe the users will start asking for it, and then we'll get it done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's kind of my take on it.
Listeners, happy to hear from you in the chat if you are building applications, maintaining applications with full framework, including web forms and MVC on full framework. So cool. All right.
Should we do some demo here, John?
Sounds good. Is that you?
That's me right there, dude.
All right.
All right, so I've got my Visual Studio 2019, and I got like 20 or 30 different versions of Visual Studio installed here, and this is like the latest and greatest of last night's build. So should anything go wrong, it's definitely not my fault, and definitely not Tim's fault, but it's the fault of the build system here, or my machine, fault. Right?
Yeah.
So that's how we do things here. So yeah, I've got two kind of projects in the solution here. So I've got a MVC full framework project as well as a web forms full framework project here. Let's go ahead and control F5 this and see what we get. I'm gonna let's bring my browser over here. I'm gonna snap that to the left and snap my Visual Studio here to the right as well. Okay, so we can see I've got my my application running here. One thing that you might notice is I've got this little Visual Studio icon in the bottom. So this is Web Live Preview. And by the way, Web Live Preview will be built in and turned on by default in the Visual Studio 2019 16.9 release that just went out today.
Wow.
So yeah, so you can try this out today. Go ahead and get the latest. So let me go ahead and click on this. The idea is, this is like an in-app kind of menu here, and we've seen things like this from other kind of hot reload technologies as well. I think for XAML they've got there's a little kind of toolbar at the top or whatever it is. So that's the idea here.
So that got by me for a second. For anyone watching, it's in the bottom left of the browser is where that Visual Studio icon is. So.
Yeah, that's right. And we're trying to come up with something that is noticeable, but at the same time, if you're not interested in it, it just kind of doesn't get in your way, right? So we could have done a whole different style here to make this way more obvious, but we did want it to be a little bit subtle there as well, John.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and enable this inspector, and then we'll kind of take a look at what are some kind of things that we can do with Web Live Preview, and then kind of go from there. So yeah, so I've enabled this inspector here. So now we're in what we call inspect mode. So now I can kind of click around the screen and see where things are at. And, if you noticed, I clicked on this text box and my Visual Studio on the left side, it went to that particular text box here. So we can see it highlighted Syed. We can do the same thing with any other types of elements here as well. Now it went to the to this paragraph. And if I go down to this heading, it'll then go to the heading. If I go to something that's in, an external file, it'll also go and navigate to that file. So here we can see I'm in the site.master file here. So I think with web forms and or maybe with web forms especially, but also probably ASP.NET Full Framework projects, a lot of these are applications that have been developed and they're pretty much in maintenance mode. I'm not saying all the apps are like that, but I believe a lot of them are. So imagine, you've got this kind of, portfolio of web forms applications that your organization has developed, and, they're out there running and live. And, let's say you find a bug in a particular app, you might not have worked on that app for a while, right? So, you go ahead and get the latest. Just one second. I did increase the font earlier, but let's go ahead and make it a little bit bigger as well.
It's kind of a balance because yeah.
Maybe
you're trying to share information and fit two different apps on the screen at the same time and all that. As you're doing that, I think it'd be important. There's a question is web forms.NET 5. And, it's probably good to kind of remind people or explain kind of the difference between .NET Core and full framework and web forms.
Sure. Right. Okay, great. Yeah. Great question. So we've got, .NET Core, .NET Framework, and then we've got, things like web forms that will build and run on .NET Core, but use the .NET Framework. So let's go ahead and kind of explain that a little bit. So, so let's talk about .NET, ASP.NET Full Framework, and that includes ASP.NET Web Forms and ASP.NET MVC, right? And with those, you need the full .NET Framework on your machine, and you also need to be running on a Windows machine. Because those depend on, system.web, right? And that's the thing that comes with the Windows operating system itself, right? So that's ASP.NET Framework, as we call it, right? And you might also hear ASP.NET Full Framework. So now, we've got that, and then we've got ASP.NET Core. So ASP.NET Core is our kind of cross-platform offering, right? And we've got Razor Pages and Blazor and Web API and, so on and so forth, right? And with ASP.NET Core, you can build and run on a variety of platforms, right? You got Windows, obviously, you've got Mac, you've got Linux, so on and so forth. So now the wrinkle kind of comes, when you can create a web forms project that's using .NET 5. But at the end of the day, it's still gonna need the full .NET Framework on there, and you're still gonna need to build and run on a Windows box, right? So that is kind of confusing to people. They say, hey, I can create an ASP.NET Web Forms project with .NET Core or .NET 5, but it's not building and running on my Mac machine. Definitely true. And that is kind of confusing, but the fact is, for anything ASP.NET Full Framework, you need a Windows machine for that. If you're looking to build and run things on any platform besides Windows, that's where ASP.NET Core comes into the picture. Do you think was there any other details that I should have covered there, John?
No, I think that's really good, and it's a good reminder, because in general, so .NET Web Forms, Web Forms has been out since 2002, and it's there are a lot of large applications running on it. There are a lot of enterprises that depend on it and are maintaining their apps. And for them, in most cases, or in a lot of cases, the best thing is to take advantage of .NET 5. But it's hard to migrate from web forms to, ASP.NET Core and then have cross-platform and all that kind of stuff. So in general, what I tell people is, if you're building a new application starting today, go with ASP.NET Core and use Razor Pages or MVC, and then you're it's very flexible and you're using the latest and greatest and the most modern thing. But if you have existing web forms applications, then using .NET 5, you can optimize your app. You can use, some more modern language things. But you do have those limitations as, you are Windows only, and, you have some restrictions as far as where you're going to go. So,
yeah,
cool.
Exactly. Okay. So now, I think we were showing the, if you kind of select something, it'll take you to it.
Yeah, and a question on that, and I promise I'll stop interrupting you quite so much. But Ken says design view came back. Is that really necessary?
Well, oh, go ahead, John.
No, go.
Well, I was gonna say, for web forms, design view hasn't gone anywhere. It's always been there, and actually, we got pretty heavy usage of that too as well. So this, like let's say if only 100 people were using web forms design view, right? We wouldn't go through all this effort, right? We could pull it out and then say, hey, we don't have to worry about the accessibility problems because it's not there anymore. But that's not the case. It's still a very kind of heavily used area of the product here. But you might not be seeing that with the applications that you're developing. But there's different types of developers out there and different types of organizations out there, and the web forms designer is very heavily used, and that's something that we're still investing in. And there's also a lot of the people, a lot of the organizations that use web forms and the web forms designer are also sometimes very large organizations as well. So that's kind of an important thing for us as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Was there any other question that you wanted to address?
Nope. Go for it.
Okay. Got it. Okay. All right. So yeah. So now we've got this kind of inspect mode here, and I kind of showed that we can kind of go around and see what's happening, and so imagine you've gotten latest for this application that you're maintaining, and there's some sort of a bug. So what you can do is go ahead and run it with WebLive Preview. Navigate to the place where you're trying to make a change, and then you won't have to figure out, where is the code for this and where is the code for that. You can just kind of use WebLive Preview to help you figure out where those things are and go make a change to it. So let's say, for example, if I wanted to just change this footer here, we could say, just do a test change here. And if you notice here, it's getting modified in the browser here, but I have not even actually saved this file yet. This is just a real-time kind of update. I'll go ahead and save that file anyways. So we've got that, and then we could also make additional kind of changes here as well. So let's say we just do a list here real quick. Whoops. Just 1 second. Having some typing problems over here. Apologize about that. You can see as I'm kind of typing here, the browser is getting updated here, and also without save as well. So this is a great way to kind of make changes in your application and then see the changes right away. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. Let me do a refresh on this page, and then we'll go ahead and enable the WebLive Preview Inspector one more time. All right, so we've got that. So I already showed you. We can kind of make some changes to the code. Let me show you something else. We could actually just change this code right here. We can change this text right here.
So in browser edit. Nice.
And if I hit enter here, we'll go ahead and commit that code. And looks like I did run into one of those problems here where the build of Visual Studio kind of got me here. So let's just change something else and try it. Okay. All right.
Okay.
So we can see after I did, 2 and type the other there, I did see that change pop up in Visual Studio here. The other kind of cool thing here is, if I'm back inside Visual Studio and let's say I've made some of those changes in the browser itself, I can also undo those changes, and it's the same kind of undo stack. So it doesn't matter where you've typed it. If you type something in the browser, it's essentially the same exact thing as typing it in the IDE, and your undo stack will be preserved all across that thing. All right, so we've got that, and then let's kind of take another look at this as well. So let's go to this text field here as well. So now we can see that I've got that text field. Let me see. Okay, so I can see. Let me actually get out of inspect mode with Control-Alt-I, and I can see that I cannot edit. I'm trying to type in here, so I can't edit anything inside that text box, right? So if I was to go to properties and then just say read only set to false, Then if I come back, now I can type it, but I haven't actually changed that property. So whether you make changes in the editor or the properties grid, those changes will be pushed over to the live running web application without even having to do save on there. All right, so we've got that. Let me show you, let's take a look at some CSS here as well. So just like the HTML changes are being pushed automatically, the CSS changes will be pushed automatically as well. So let's say background color, we'll set it to red, I guess. We can see that's going through. I still haven't saved my file.
Hot dog stand.
Yeah, let's change the font family here. We can see the font family has changed there. And, I don't know about the viewers, but, for myself personally, I'm not really a Mads Christensen, right? Like, I don't know CSS in and out, right? So for me, I'm constantly kind of doing this game of, let me try out this CSS property. Let me try out that other CSS property. And then, normally what I would do is I would do it in the browser with the developer tools, but now I can do it just in my CSS file. And this also would work for CSS preprocessors like less or sass. So, if this was a less file, then those changes would be picked up and then we would push those to the browser as well. So that's pretty cool. Let's take another look at what's some other things that we can do here. So
a lot of great response. People are very happy to see this. Question on whether this would work with Blazor. And as you mentioned earlier, you're specifically talking about web forms, and this is full framework. So that's a separate, Blazor would be a separate thing.
Yeah, that's right. But hold on just one second. Aiden, you gotta get him out of here. Okay, so anyway, sorry about that.
No worries.
Sorry about that. Anyways, sorry, that kind of threw me off there. All right, Blazor. Well, that's a great kind of question here, because if you go talk to the ASP.NET team, what the ASP.NET team, so we've got this kind of web forms, we've got web forms, and like I said, there's still a lot of people using web forms, right? So one question is, what is the path for web forms developers to create modern web applications, right? You can obviously still create web forms apps, but you're not gonna. It's gonna be difficult to take advantage of the latest kind of HTML and CSS and web technologies there from a web forms project, right? I think you can do it, but I think it will be tough. So now, when we talk to the ASP.NET team, what our kind of hope is really to have web forms developers in the future to hopefully create Blazor applications, right? And Blazor comes in two different flavors, right? Blazor comes in Blazor Server, and then it also comes in Blazor WebAssembly. And with Blazor Server, all the code is living and running on a web server that can be internal into a network and then can be protected as well, right? So Blazor WebAssembly, everything just gets downloaded to the client, and everybody can run some sort of decompiler to look at your code and all that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I think Blazor Server would be really great for those kind of internal LOB apps or other types of apps that enterprise users are creating. So now with Blazor, so now we're doing this web live preview, and we absolutely want to bring this to Blazor as well. So that's one thing that we've been having conversations with the ASP.NET team on this, and we're definitely interested to bring this to Blazor. And because we're designing this for web forms users, we're going to have to extend that to Blazor as well if we want to actually make that goal of going from web forms, maintaining web forms project to creating new Blazor projects, right? So I think that's a really great question. We're not there yet.
It's a really nice actually fit and migration path, because they both are built on components. So there's kind of a nice natural, if you're used to building applications using web forms components, it's a pretty architecturally, it's not a huge jump. And now all of a sudden you're on the latest and greatest cutting edge web technologies. And we actually have Jeff Fritz built out a set of Blazor components that
controls. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
those controls that match up. So,
and I think I believe with what Jeff Fritz is coming up with, I think it's almost like a copy and paste You know, I mean, for the most part, I think you can kind of copy your web forms code and paste it into your Blazor app. And, you know, maybe you have to make some kind of small little tweaks there. But, you know, I think for the most part, it's pretty copy and pasteable from one project to another. So I think that's really great as well. I noticed there was a question here. It was about Edge rendering engine.
Yeah, there were a few questions on that. Yeah. So, and this is actually right in the browser, right? This is not like, so.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I'm demoing this with, it with Edge, but this also works for any kind of Chromium based browser. Tim, do you want to speak to this particular question here?
Yeah, it's whatever browser you're using, basically. We're targeting the modern browsers, so it'll work in Firefox, it'll work in Chrome, it'll work in Edge, it'll work in pretty much what you're using for your day-to-day development.
Right.
So you don't need to worry about a specific engine or any engine rendering artifacts or anything like that. It's whatever you're using.
Very cool.
All right, great, awesome. Okay, so let's.
Go ahead. I don't want to break the flow too much, but I had a few questions come up. And it's great. We have people that are complete beginners to ASP.NET, and so just to kind of like, people are saying, how do I even get started with this? Let me just share this real quick. So if you go to dot.net, this is the .NET website, and then if you click on web, then there are different things you can build with web. We're talking about web apps today, but there's also things like microservices and APIs. If you click on web apps, it'll explain what it is, what you can build, make sure that you're in the right place and you understand what even we're trying to build. And then if you click on this get started, it'll walk you through a 10-minute thing. There's a video series from Leslie Richardson that explains, what is ASP.NET. So straight from the beginnings. So we really do try and make it easy to kind of, because there's a lot going on, and this is a product that's 20 years old but has new stuff that just shipped today, and you're talking about things that are still in the works. There's a lot to wrap your head around. So this is what I recommend for people that are just getting started. And then just to share this out, this is Jeff Fritz's Blazor web form components we were just talking about. So these are all the web forms controls that they've built. So all kinds of stuff in here, and they've got all strategies and migration guides and all kinds of stuff. So I just wanted to jump in and show those, and we're back to you.
Yeah. And then I'm noticing a couple of kind of questions along a similar kind of line here. So, they're asking, how are updates pushed, and is WebLive Preview is WebLive Preview just constantly refreshing the browser, and is the state maintained? So the answer is we are not constantly just refreshing the browser here. So what we're doing is there's a connection, and it's a WebSocket connection, I believe, between the browser and Visual Studio, and wherever there's a change, we will detect that change and then push it into the live DOM here, basically. So there's no kind of page refresh happening here. Whatever state you have in this page, like let's say if I was to change silver to khaki, and then if I were to enable inspect mode, and let's just say I change this text here to just color, I guess, we will notice that the selection stays on khaki here. So the state is preserved. We're not just refreshing the browser. And so there's actually let's go to ASP.NET MVC real quick, because I've only shown
tons of questions on here. MVC. Yeah, we've got a lot of people asking about MVC. So
there was also a question of how can I enable this on an existing project, right? So you don't have to do anything to enable this on any existing project. So all you got to do is get Visual Studio 2019 16.9. And Tim, it's on by default in 16.9, right? Or is there a preview flag?
It's there's a preview flag, and I'm not entirely sure when that preview flag is enabled or not for public users. But if it's not right then, it will be very shortly.
Okay, so we can go into, so what I did was, so let's say you get 2019 16.9. And then if you run your ASP.NET MVC or ASP.NET Web Forms app and you don't get the little menu on the bottom, you could also check. You could check for one of your files to see if there's an edit in browser. And if you don't have edit in browser, then what that means is the preview option has not been enabled. So you can go to tools options and then environment
Once you get to it, we'll have
preview.
you zoom in. Yep.
Yeah. I will zoom in. Let me just see if I can find it.
Yep.
There's
So there's
a
a
lot of
search up
preview
in the
options.
top too. Oh yeah.
Oh, there is?
Well, in the upper left to get to the pane you're on, to the dialogue you're on, but I don't know if it goes beyond that.
That's for the, yeah, that's not what we want. That's not what
Yeah.
we want. Yeah, no, it's got to be in here somewhere. Let me just take a look at oh yeah, this thing got confused. Let's take a look at it. So where is it? It's here somewhere. Enable Web Live
Probably
preview.
towards
Yeah,
the
right
bottom.
there.
Yeah.
Web
Okay.
Live
Now
preview.
zoom way in for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we got that little double preview. I hope you guys like that. So make sure to check that, click OK, and then do a restart on your Visual Studio itself. And then you should see Edit in Browser, which will take you to that page with Web Live Preview enabled. And if you do Control F5 or F5, you should get the little Visual Studio icon down here in the bottom. So let's go ahead and do...
I just wanted to throw out there that for versions of VS that don't have it built in yet, our current previews that are out on the marketplace, you can still install the extension from the V6. Send that link over to John on the chat, and if you put that up there too. Yep. So so it's going to be built into VS, but if your copy of VS doesn't have it built in yet, you can get at least the current previews still support the older versions of VS, and so you can get it from the marketplace right now to install it.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So yeah, let me kind of expand on that. So the approach that we're taking with Web Live Preview is, we basically built it as an extension, and we first put it on the Visual Studio Marketplace, and then we've actually built it in. But the idea is, we can update that marketplace extension all the time, and then get updates to users, that same day, right? So that's we want to be able to kind of iterate fast on this thing. That's the idea why we did that.
Great.
All right, so I've got my ASP.NET MVC project open here, and what I did was I just right-clicked on index.cshtml and said, hey, edit in browser here. So this is something that I want to show that I think is pretty cool here. So let's go. I got this little loop here. Right? And let's say instead of number, I just want to do index. And boom, if you notice that it changed all the indexes here, right? So it wasn't like, it just changed that one that I was on, right? So Web Live Preview, it has an intimate knowledge of your code and what actually is happening. And it knows that, say, hey, when I modified this text, what specific HTML elements are at play here and which ones need to be updated, right? So this is beyond just like hey, replace the actual text that I'm seeing here, right? So man, I thought that was really cool when the team put that one together. So we got that. We already showed the CSS changes here. And I know that Tim wants to show some new stuff here. I showed the inline text changes. Let's talk about the tag navigator real quick for a second. So let me click on this button here. We can see down on the screen, we've got this little tag navigator thing. So this can help you kind of like, select elements here, right? So
for people on smaller screens, you're mousing over on the bottom of the browser view on the right there.
Yeah. Let me make it a little bit bigger here. So here's the tag navigator, as we call it, right? So right now, when I clicked here, you notice, I got the text itself selected. But let's say I wanted the button selected. You can click the button here, or if you wanted to kind of keep going up to find the right thing, then you can kind of do that with this tag navigator here.
This is really handy for a lot of reasons, but those cases where because you can have views and partials and mass, it's like, where is this coming from? So you could navigate the site and click through and it would take you back to that in the view then, huh?
That's right.
Wow. Yeah, exactly. And, this is just kind of, what I'm showing here is just kind of like a file new project, but, for realistic apps, man, they're just made up of hundreds of files and everything's kind of just mixed basically. Right. All right. So we got that. So we talked about pretty much, I think I pretty much talked about, I think I showed everything that I wanted to show here. There's obviously more here, but I think we want to give some time to Tim so he can kind of show us, what is it that he's working on, and then kind of go from there.
That sounds great. Tim, you ready to share your screen then?
Yep. Should be good.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, so I'm just like Syed, also running the latest builds of VS, but on top of that, I'm also running a preview build of WebLive Preview, if that's enough previews for you. So I'm running a build that'll probably be released next week, conservatively. It'll be the next update for it. But it's got one particular new feature in it that we have for parity with the web forms designer that I wanted to show off real quick, just to give an idea of what we're trying to do there. So I've got the same sort of setup here with the web forms app here. I've added a radio button list to the page, got it selected over here in the web page, same sort of thing that Syed was showing. In web forms, I'll switch over here to the designer, to the old designer in Visual Studio. And one of the common things that people used in the designer was this tiny little button that's probably hard to see, but it's so old and not accessible that I can't actually make it any bigger. So that you just have to trust me if you can't see it. If you click on that, it gives you radio button list tasks and a set of things that you can do with that radio button list in a sort of WYSIWYG manner. And so that's a common thing that people are doing in Visual Studio in the designer itself. So we wanted to bring that over into the browser also. So in this build of WebLive Preview, you can see if you click on the selection tag here for the radio button list, you also get that radio button list tasks pop up directly in the browser here with the same items. So you'll notice there is a difference. You can see the enable auto postback item here is grayed out. This current build doesn't have support for modifying the properties directly through the browser. Eventually, this will be a checkbox that you'll be able to check right here in the browser and change the property back in the source. But for now, that's disabled. But the other ones, the ones that actually invoke an action, you can click. So I can go ahead and hit edit items. It pulls up the dialog just like it would have done in doing it from the designer in Visual Studio. I can add another item here. Oops, I can type. Company D. And go ahead and hit OK. And you can see it made the change and it synced that across to the browser right away, just using the sort of visual surface there. The same thing goes, I made a modification to the default template up here so that the menu up here is actually a bulleted list control. It's not that way in the template, but I went ahead and made that change. Same thing here, can edit it, add a new item here, say we want a help section, give it an actual URL since it's a bunch of links, and that gets added right there. So we're just, you know, you're able to make the changes through that visual editor. It modifies the source, and that gets changed. That change gets pushed over to the browser right away. So, like I said, in this initial build, we're only going to have the items like edit items and choose data source. I'm going to click on that so you can see it pops up. Those ones that sort of invoke an action, but eventually, probably the preview following that will also have the ability to modify the properties that show up. Flip back to, oops, wrong page. Flip back to the designer so you can make sure you see what it looks like in the old designer. You know, it's a checkbox there. We'll have that same experience in the browser eventually. We just don't have that quite yet.
Wow. Okay.
We've also done a good bit of work in this build. Syed had mentioned the accessibility story for this. The old designer didn't really have much of an accessibility story, and we're trying to fix that here. We've done a lot of work in this latest build, particularly with keyboard shortcuts and color contrast to make it a little more, a little more visible, a little more accessible. You'll notice my tag navigator has a little bit more color pop to it for the hover than Syed's did, things like that. So we're trying to iron out some of those details also as we go through these previews.
Just a thing in passing, but it reminds me when you're talking about accessibility, of course, that's important for people who are restricted from actually even using the product at all because of accessibility, which is, got to be the top concern, but also just for day-to-day for everyone using it. This is so much more of a usable product, by fixing the accessibility, you just make it a better product for everyone. This is great.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. And then, when we talk about accessibility, the first thing that kind of comes to mind is, maybe someone who has a permanent issue, maybe whatever the permanent issue is. But the fact is, accessibility features are not just for people who have permanent issues, right? Like, for example, sometimes if I use my mouse too much, my wrist will hurt. And maybe I have some sort of issues here that, could cause a delay. Maybe I can't use my mouse for a few days. So that's where the keyboard shortcuts will come in for me as well, right? So don't think about accessibility issues being people who have permanent issues. There's lots of temporary issues too that everybody who's watching the stream can run into.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
So I did notice a couple other questions here as well. So there was one kind of question of, can I use this through a .NET run command? So this WebLive preview right now is really just for ASP.NET full framework project. So it's got nothing to do with .NET command. But with that being said, we are working on a hot reload, which will have some kind of similar things to what we're seeing here, but not totally the same. So in that case, there will be a kind of like .NET run watch or whatever, or .NET watch or whatever it is, right? So we'll have that. And then I think there was another question here, but I forget which one it was. Oh yeah, any plans to bring this to VS Code as well? Okay, so that's also a great question, but like I said, we're kind of focused on ASP.NET full framework here. Where we see ASP.NET developers in Visual Studio Code is more on the kind of ASP.NET Core side, not necessarily ASP.NET full framework. So I think when we do bring support for ASP.NET Core, Visual Studio Code will definitely be a question there, and we're going to have to rely on the community for their feedback on, should we go through and do that work or just leave it in Visual Studio? That's going to really be a question, for what kind of feedback we receive at that time.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So is that all that you had, Tim? Or
yeah, that was a couple things I wanted to show.
Okay. This is great.
So
like the obvious things for people watching, they can grab the latest Visual Studio. They can set this up using the preview flag you showed. They can also install the extension. So if you're using an older version, and what are some of the things you're most interested in hearing feedback from users on?
Yeah, right. That's a great question. So what I'm the most interested in is, does WebLive Preview work with the current projects that you're working on? The current the web forms and the ASP.NET full framework projects. Does it work with those projects? Because with web forms, sometimes it's really hard to get to a real web application there, right? Because these are a lot of enterprise apps there, and man, sometimes they get to be really huge, right? Like I've seen solutions with 100 projects, and I've seen web forms projects with thousands of files in them, and I don't have access to those types of projects, right? Like I can't test those projects myself, right? And Tim doesn't have any access to that sort of stuff either, right? So that's the primary thing that I wanted people to do was, go ahead and try out WebLive Preview. If you run into any issues, if it's not working on your project for one reason or another, definitely shoot me an email or reach out to me on Twitter, and then we go from there. But besides that, I was also looking for to create like a kind of a team of users here that we can kind of work together and help kind of shape, what's the future of this web forms designer there. So anybody who's interested in, if you're using the web forms designer on a regular basis, and if you want to have a say into, what the future of that's going to look like, then, now's your opportunity. Shoot me an email, and we're going to be having lots of conversations, over the next several months here as we kind of shape this product. And, I do have one kind of particular question that, I believe I know the answer to it, but I still want to ask it anyway. So what we saw is, we saw Visual Studio on the left and we saw the browser on the right. And that's not how web forms developers use the designer today, right? So the designer today is built into the IDE. So we've got the source view, the design view, the split view. So one question is, if the web forms designer was only in the browser, is that good enough, or do we also need to bring it into the IDE like the current web forms designer is or not? And that's one kind of specific question that I wanted to get some feedback on before we went through and did that work. Yeah, but there's also lots of other questions as well. But I think at this point it's, does WebLive Preview successfully work in your real world web forms and ASP.NET full framework apps is the most kind of important question that I'd like to have answered.
An important thing too with this is a developer tool. So I understand people are sometimes hesitant to try out, like the latest releases of the, the actual framework, like the latest release of .NET and, try the latest, greatest stuff. But for developer tools, this is a pretty easy thing to turn on and off. Or run as a Visual Studio extension. So it's not really a risky thing to be trying this out.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then even, when I showed when I showed that InApp Menu, right? That's not cluttering up your own app. We're using the Shadow DOM and so, it's totally separate from your live running web application there too. So, theoretically there should be zero impact to that, to your live running web app. But, the chance that there is, I would definitely love to learn more about that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. I guess that's about it then. I guess that's probably a good place to wrap up. So we've shared your email address several times. Anyone that's interested, and I think that's great. That you're saying you want to have like more in-depth conversations with people and get them involved going forward. So
yeah, and John, honestly, I want to make developing ASP.NET web apps easier, dude. If I rewind the clock 6-7 years back, let's say I didn't know anything about ASP.NET. Let's say I just create C# desktop apps. But my manager came over and said, "Hey, I want you to create this web app." Right? I could have done file new project web forms. I can just kind of drag and drop my way to a starting point, and then I can learn as I go, right? I feel like ASP.NET Core is a lot harder than web forms was to get started for getting started, right? So so that's kind of one of my Uber goals is, hey, let's make developing ASP.NET Core apps as easy or even easier than web forms. And I think that is a real tough challenge.
Yeah, you're right. Awesome. All right. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up. So thanks a bunch for your time on. If you've been, for those watching or people watching the recordings later, please get in touch with Syed and help get involved with this going forward. So, all right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Syed and Tim.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
Bye-bye.